Okay, guys, thanks for joining. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Martin, Principal Business Analyst, Agile Enthusiast and Foodie. There's me with a lovely load of pancakes. So I thought it was only right to kind of tie two things that I love together as part of my talk and have a little bit of fun with it as well. I truly think if you want to 100x anything in life, you need to laugh along the way. So this is just, it's a little bit of fun as well. So I hope you enjoy. So it's been a bit of a hot topic recently, that the idea that Agile is dead. Two of these guys, Bob Martin and Dave Thomas, were actually two of the original 17 men in Utah in 2001 that came up with the manifesto. And them, amongst others recently, have been questioning whether or not this is even the right way to work anymore. So this talk is not about that, but the long story short is that yes, it is still the right way to work. It's just that we've lost our way with it. So I'm sure you've all seen this a million times before, but here's a reminder again of the Agile Manifesto. So just, saying that, we still value processes and tools. It's just that we value individuals and interactions more. I won't go into this because I'm sure you've seen it many times. So where did everything go wrong really with Agile? It's pretty much just people missing the whole point. So there was these people being paid to come in to do these huge Agile scale transformations for companies who were just seeing it like a box ticking exercise, just saying, oh, we're doing sprints now, we're Agile, or we're doing stand-ups every day, we must be Agile, and completely just missing the whole point of it. Also, the manifesto was written for developers, written for the teams. So but then instead, you now had project managers going on these courses and then using the daily stand-up as like a micromanaging tool. So just all of these things that was just completely missing the whole point of what they were trying to achieve. So let's take Agile back to something much more simple and familiar. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the concept of cooking or baking, especially in these months of lockdown, being stuck indoors. So think of Agile process like a recipe. So say you've never made something before, what do? You're likely to go out, get a few recipe books, maybe look up some recipes online and see which ones seem like they align to what your needs are. And you're likely to follow the recipe exactly because you've got no idea whether or not you can substitute pancetta for bacon. You've got no idea what your kind of individual tastes are. It's a learning process. So what do? You go, you follow the recipe exactly, but the more you try and the more you cook, the more you realize that perhaps there's a particular ingredient that you love. So you're going to try and work that into everything you make going forward. You might discover that your oven is ridiculously powerful and therefore you need to adjust all your recipes going forward. And you also realize when you can bend the rules and when you can't. But you need to make mistakes along the way a lot of the time to actually discover that. Okay, so how do we tie this back to development now? So it's exactly the same process. Like again, just like taste is subjective, teams are subjective. So the more experience you have, the more you know when you can bend the rules and when you can't to suit your certain needs. If you're a junior team who's never worked that way before, then yeah, maybe you will actually just, you'll see what others are doing and you'll copy exactly. But the more stable and experienced that team gets, the more they might realize that actually we don't need to do this, or we need less refinement sessions because we're really aligned with the product owner, or we know the code base well, all of these things. But it's all about just, when the more experienced you are, sometimes following recipes exactly could be to your detriment. So just try and find your balance really. But with adapting, remember that recipes are there for a reason. Some things should just not be attempted, like this lovely Reese's Pieces baked bean cup thing here. There's certain things that you don't need to try for the sake of it, that they're tried and tested and they're classic for a reason. You wouldn't do things like have Kanban without any planning or retros. That's just not a good idea. There's certain things that are just musts, and I've got a little something on that later. Feedback is key. So again, like I said, just like taste is subjective, like how people like to work is subjective. So just because something's worked for one team doesn't necessarily mean it will always work for others. So treat your team, like you're having a dinner party. You want your process to be enjoyed by as many of your team as possible, the same way that you'd want your food to be enjoyed by as many people as possible. So if you try something out, be sure that you actually ask for feedback in your retro. And the retro is your time to do that. Ask the question, like, do we like where our stand-ups are? Do we think we should have more refinement sessions? Should we have less? Like, this is how you tweak your recipe to get exactly the right balance, is by trying something and then asking how it goes. But you need to add that feedback in order to get it right. Also, think of experienced Scrum Masters or Agile coaches like your chefs, if you've got access to them. Ask them about how you're doing things, what they've done before, what works for them, and just use it to get the feedback there as well. And reducing risk is a really key thing when it comes to finding what your perfect Agile recipe is. So in the same way that you wouldn't try and cook a wedding cake for your wedding day for the first time, because you're already stressed, you've got a million things on your mind, you're not in the right mindset. So if you've got a super tight deadline and your team is working in a certain way, it's probably not the best time to try and uproot things, because change is disruptive. Like trying to go from 2 refinement sessions to 3, like just even the admin overheads of changing the meeting schedules and stuff like that, just not something you want to deal with. So just be really, take that in mind for when you're trying to tweak things. And it's also good to try and only change one thing at a time, because then, like with testing with anything, you weren't sure which variable might have made the difference. So here is my very basic Agile recipe for you all. So banana bread was a very, very popular thing during lockdown. Apparently everyone was making it. So here is something I've kind of created. So think of Agile as banana bread. So there's 3 things you absolutely need. You need bananas, eggs, and flour in order to make it work. So bananas are your collaboration. Without this, it's not Agile, it's not banana bread. You need collaboration. That is a key ingredient. Secondly, you need your flour, your refinement sessions. So this is what you need in order for your bread to rise, or for your team to deliver successfully. So you need refinement. And eggs are your retrospectives. These bind everything together. If you don't have your retrospectives, your team and your process will just fall apart. So there's your 3 key ingredients. You also need your oven. So this is your safe, warm, trusting environment for your team to feel like no blame or any, a very good culture that it should be able to propose changes to the recipe and your process without fear. And you need that as well. Again, absolute given, otherwise it's not going to work. And also time. So you can't just bung everything together and then boom, your process is there, you have your banana bread. You need time to actually get things working. So if you change something or you have a new team starting out process, then give them time to actually just leave them be for a sprint or 2, just to see how things are working before uprooting things again. You might just want to check in on the oven, check in on the process every now and then, just to make sure nothing's burning. But apart from that, like if you open the door every 5 minutes and changing things, then again, it's just not going to work. So yes, remember, time is also key. So that's your basic recipe. There's loads of things you can change to your process, but there's things like baking powder, which would be your 3 amigos, which is just a little something you can add in to refinement to help it bit more effective, to rise a bit easier. And you also have things like your garnishes, like some people like to put a banana on top to garnish it. This is your more like company-wide demos. So again, you might not need to do this if your PO is super aligned to your team and knows everything and giving you feedback, but it can be a great thing just to make the team feel proud of what they've achieved as well, and it looks good. But be creative. This next slide is, I'm not expecting you to read it, but this is just for when I share the deck. This is just everything I've just talked about for your basic Agile banana bread recipe. So yeah, in summary, basically, the more experienced the team is, the less that you need to follow the recipe exactly, but don't go crazy for the sake of it. Remember your 3 things you absolutely need always. Consider timing and risks when you want to change something to your process, because remember, it is always disruptive. And feedback is key on your process and delivery. So always asking those questions to everyone about how they're feeling about the process. And if you find something that works and you like it, stick with it for that team. Absolutely. Why disrupt something if it's working? So that is just a very small whistle-stop tour, 10 minutes, about my little Agile recipe. In all seriousness, if you ever want to talk about anything regarding process or Agile, I am here. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this little fun comparison. So thanks all.